Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the episode where we are talking Luca Guadagnino films. But of course, you already know this is the part of the show where we take a look at your Instagram responses from the previous episode. And that previous episode was monsters and kaiju movies. And the movie boners said lots of greats, but Troll Hunter is one of our favorites. The Revisionist Almanac podcast, always a tongue twister, went with Cloverfield. One of Us is Bored went with a surprising choice in Rugrats in Paris, the movie. Technically a monster myth film, I think. When I had a look at that, I was just like, is she just trolling me, or is this actually a monster film? I think it technically is. And Anton Kinlove went with Pacific Rim. Some great responses, as always. Aaron, I am intrigued. What's your monster film of choice for you, sir?
Yeah, like I said before we started, I think out of their monster films, I'll probably go with probably the latest, actually second latest one to appear in Godzilla -1.
Nice.
Yeah, great film, surprised me. I love them sort of films as well that just come out of the, like, you know, when you're like, oh, what's your top 10 anticipated films for the year? No one even knew like this was even like being like, and then it comes out and you watch it. They're entertaining like them Godzilla films, but that Godzilla -1's like an almost perfect film.
Absolutely, yeah. And the effect, it had such a small budget, and I think it won an Oscar because of that. To be honest, because the effects looked amazing with like no money.
They all had their little dinosaurs with them.
Yeah, and it's just a great, powerful movie. Just from that sense as well. But obviously, this episode we are talking Luca Guadagnino films, and it is my turn, people. And I went with Bones and All. I've been really fascinated with this film and really wanted to watch it, and I've not seen it before. And I do love my horror films, especially cannibal horror films. One of my favourite films of all time, frankly, is Julia Ducournau's Raw from 2016. I do love that one. So I was expecting a lot. You know, Luca Guadagnino definitely has dipped his toe in horror before with the Suspiria remake. His previous film, From Bones and All, I believe. And a very, very different take from Dario Argento's classic from the 70s. With his one, with that, it's very long, and I'm not sure it needed to be that long. But it's got some kind of really cool horror imagery in there, and Tilda Swinton plays like the dance teacher, and she plays an old man as well in that film, which is interesting. Also, I'll mention, like, you're probably screaming into your podcast device of choice saying, like, why have you not picked Call Me By Your Name? Well, we have done an episode on that film way back when we did our LGBTQ episode, where that was put up against Carol when Boaz was on the podcast. Yeah, that's a great one as well. If you can separate what like Armie Hammer has done and just watch the film, then I can do that. Not many people can, but it's just, I still think it's a great movie, Call Me By Your Name. So I went with Bones and All. So what happens in Bones and All? Well, going back to the IMDb as always, like a young woman embarks on a 1,000-mile odyssey through America where she meets a disenfranchised drifter, Timothée Chalamet's character, but all roads lead back to their terrifying past and to a final stand that will determine whether love can survive their otherness. IMDb definitely has some Very strange plot synopsis. Yeah, I mean, certainly this film is very much a road movie with cannibals, and there's a love story in there as well. Aaron, what did you make of this one then?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it came out into cinemas, I actually didn't get to see it in the cinema. I had to watch it when it came out after. And it was one of them films that sort of came out, saw the trailer and thought, gotta watch that. Time flies by, didn't see it. Then I was, as soon as it came out on streaming, I was like, finally, that's out. Sat down, watched it, and I thought, I think it's one of them films you watch and you enjoy it, but you appreciate it more after.
Okay.
When you get to like sort of consolidate your thoughts about what's really happened. Because I do think there's a lot of scenes in there that like you're there like, oh my God, like this is like kind of horrific in mode. Like as romantic as it is, it's almost like horrific as well. And then when you finish it, you're like, yeah, that was a great movie. And then you sort of try and digest your thoughts, read some thoughts online about like maybe the meanings behind certain things. You're like, bloody hell, like that's clever as anything. But yeah, no, it's definitely a good fit. Like it's unsettling. It's got some unsettling scenes, but obviously it's a horror, so it's one of them. You're going to have that, but yeah, it's great. It's like romantically disgusting.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
but like you said, like there is like a really great love story in there, and it's interesting the way Luca's gone about it.
Yeah,
with intermitted with eating people.
Yeah, I have to say I was a little bit disappointed in this. I don't know whether my expectations were quite high after seeing a lot of his previous work. You know, I feel like some of the storytelling and the script was a bit messy and a bit all over the place. I feel like it was a tad unfocused, but again, because with like a bigger splash, you only have like 4 characters, and you know it's very focused on those 4. Whereas with this, you have essentially like 3 characters in this, but they're very much going from place to place. And with Marin's character, like she at times does become a tad irritating. I'm not gonna lie, like when she's trying to like discover who she is, and I don't know, I just found it a tad grating with that type of thing. Did you get that, or were you fine with that?
I wasn't as irritated,
right?
But I do remember being like, did feel like there was, like you said, with like a bigger splash. It's almost like you have 4 characters that you sort of enjoy each of their personalities. But in this, you are definitely like less inclined to enjoying like their sort of what their arcs or whatever is going on, because obviously she's obsessed with like all them quotes. It's like just be like normal almost. But maybe less irritated, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you know, there's not a lot there with certainly her personality compared to the other characters, but I feel like what the film is going for is just this struggle of what it means to be a cannibal or what it means to be human. Like, can they marry up? And, you know, you have all these kind of different types of cannibal in this. You know, you have David Gordon Green as randomly, very random that he's in this, who chooses to be a cannibal. He doesn't have like the thirst to eat people. And then you have her mum, who's kind of gone mad, you know, mentally unwell by being a cannibal. And you have Lee, Timothy Chalamet's character, that is quite happy to kill people to feed himself. Obviously kind of chooses, I think the film makes it very clear that he chooses the right people that deserve to die, kind of thing. And Marin goes from, you know, each person, and she's just like, yeah, I don't want to be like that, I don't want to be like that, I don't want to be like that. But I'm like, you have to deal with this at some point. And I feel like it just kind of feels like a bit of a cop out that they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, we're just going to try and be normal human beings as much as we can until, you know, Sully comes back to stir things up, let's say. So yeah, I you know, I don't hate this film. I definitely appreciated it a lot, as you said, Aaron. And also it just kind of felt a little safe at times with the direction. Like, I do like my horror films, and I felt the restraint there. I love the last scene in this, and we'll get into it. But I feel like I just wanted a little bit more. There was some promise there with the direction with Luca Guadagnino, but then it's just like, it just fell a little bit flat sometimes. I know that's kind of the tone that he's kind of trying to go for. I get that, but I feel like the film could have been a little bit more creative and kind of tried to push the boundaries a little bit more for me.
I do get what you mean, because that last scene is so good that sometimes you leave watching the film with that. You know, you remember like the last scene probably more than anything.
Yeah.
So for someone like me that's not like greatly into horrors, the fact it was probably a bit safer in that sort of terms, I probably like might have enjoyed it a little bit more than the average horror fan. Like, that's what I do find with, when I watch a horror film, I'm like, I really enjoyed that, but I didn't really think it was that scary. And then I think, wait a minute, it's a horror film. Would they hate that film because it's not scary enough? And it's one of them like balancing acts. Like, it might be an all right film, but on a horror perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm one of those that really likes horror films, even though it's not that scary. There's certainly different types of tones and things that I really like with horror, all types of horror, and I get a great kick out of it, and it doesn't have to be scary necessarily. I mean, there's a scene in here that's very scary for me. I was like, holy shit. But yeah, we'll get into that. So directing then, like, there's a really interesting scene that feels very underplayed where like Sully and Merrin are staying at this old like lady's house and they're waiting for her to die, and when she dies in the morning, like Sully, Mark Rylance's character, is like munching away on this old lady, and the reveal is a bit shaky, like it's handheld, which I found a bit odd. Like they were just going for this like other kind of shock value, like they're in a documentary, and it didn't particularly work that well for me. I know he does that a little bit in A Bigger Splash, just randomly puts in handheld stuff, and it can feel a little bit jarring. Not so much in A Bigger Splash, but here it did a little bit, and I think like a simple shot would have worked just fine here. And I just didn't add, and it just didn't add anything for me. But then we go into these like series of shots on the woman's photos, family photos, which deliberately and definitely highlights like the crunchy sounds of them munching away, which I found was effective, making the sounds like feel worse in a way. Then there was like a weird comedy scene where like Mark Rylance is like covered in blood after they're done, and he wipes blood off his pants, and a bit of flesh just drops off his vest while he's getting out of his...
Yeah, that was all horrible.
While he's getting out his like long piece of hair that he's collected over the years, his trophies, I guess. It's like a strange sequence of tones that definitely goes into comedy horror for me, possibly unintentionally. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was quite a... Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed that scene, actually.
Yeah, it was sort of... It's like going at this... everything about it, like... I mean, he's in that horrible, like, vest, and then he's in them horrible, like, pants that you see, like, Trevor wearing in, like, GTA or something. You're like, what you're doing's horrible, but you somehow come out of this worse. You look worse than, like, that corpse on the floor. Like,
yeah. Absolutely covered in blood.
I mean, I did actually quite like the opening, like the sort of opening scene where you know that she's a cannibal of thing, where she's at the like the little sleepover party sort of thing, and all that goes on. I thought that was all right, that was decent, but horrifying. But
yeah, that was actually my favorite scene. Yeah, like the opening is kind of really interesting, where it feels pretty slow and just like a kind of a high school movie, where Merrin and, you know, Taylor Russell's character has been invited to a sleepover. You know, when we see her in her own home, it looks pretty run down, and you assume it's just because they're just quite poor or something. You know, when Merrin is at like this girl's house, it's a fairly like normal setup and with what you would expect, and they're trying out like different makeups, and you think Merrin is going to go in for like a kiss with this other girl. Then you think she's just doing some weird like foreplay by sucking this girl's finger. Nope. Yeah. She bites it, and they go all out on the crunchy sound effects. So there's like zero suspense build up for me, and it just happens out of nowhere, and I love that. Like, a great shock moment for me to introduce the horror of this film.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I did love that. I wanted more stuff like that. Like, there's certainly a few occasions, but not enough for me. I feel like the film definitely focuses on the drama and the romance more than the horror, which I totally understand, but I wanted more horror.
Yeah, I mean, it's because when I saw the trailer for the film, even that focused more. It didn't really come across as like, oh, this is going to be a horror film sort of thing. It came across as like, there's going to be these two people in a relationship, and it's going to be a bit twisted. And then when actually watching it, you're like, I was like, oh, this is actually a bit like more disturbing than what I was expecting.
Right. But I mean, there is some flair here, but sometimes you don't even notice it. Like, at times there's some like really cool shots in there, and you think you're gonna like get something really special coming up, like when Lee is in like this carnival and he meets this guy behind one of the game stalls, and there's this like amazing close up on like Timothée Chalamet's eyes, and you're like, this is gonna be good. But again, you just have this kind of restraint, and we just see it from, and we just see Timothée Chalamet like slit this guy's throat from a distance from Merrin's perspective. Yes, it feels kind of intimate and raw because he's wanking the guy off, but it feels a bit safe for me. Like, there's just, you know, moments of flair and horror here. I just feel specifically in that scene. I mean, they don't have to be doing that kind of sex act.
Yeah, it was just right. Like, we'll chuck this in here to make it more shocking, but when you actually watch it, you're like, I don't know.
They're actually, because they put that in, it kind of makes it more boring, you know? I feel like if they would, I don't know, doing something less explicit, they could have been more creative with it rather than just trying to, just have a simple wide shot, you know? I don't know. It's just, it definitely goes with the tone, I guess, but as we kind of said in A Bigger Splash, like, Luca Guadagnino likes to have little flourishes here and there to tell the story, and definitely tries to encapsulate the environment that they're in, especially in A Bigger Splash. And I don't think he necessarily achieves that as much in this film. I guess, tonally it's slightly different. There's more vistas going on of, the big American West or whatever, but I just feel like, I wanted a bit more of the Luca Guadagnino from A Bigger Splash in its narrative, if you get what I'm saying.
It sometimes does feel like it's a film that was set, I don't know how to like word it. It was almost like, sometimes you get them films that doesn't really have much of a director's influence on it almost. It's like, this is what it's just set out to be, and this is what it will look like, and can you achieve this?
Yeah, because when you look at like Suspiria, his other horror film, there's certainly some restrained moments in there, but when the horror comes, it really comes, and you're like, wow, this is insane. Whereas, yes, it has a great like climactic scene here, and and the fact that the rest of the film is fairly restrained, it definitely highlights that last scene. But again, I just feel like there could have been a little bit more style here. I don't know, I'm just wanting more. But saying that, there is one little scene which I really liked. Like, I loved the jump scare with Merrin's mother in this hospital. Like, the nurse just hands Merrin this letter, and we have like voiceover again from her mother this time, and we've been used to a bit of voiceover with Merrin listening to her dad's tapes, and it's pretty standard directing, but it's pretty obvious that her mother has like eaten her hands off, and the drug of being a cannibal has driven her mad. So as you listen and watch her, you have this question in your head of, is she going to try and eat her daughter, or is she going to leave Merrin alone because she's her daughter? Nope. She says, the world of love wants no monsters in it, so let me help you out of it.
Probably the best quote.
Yeah, then like a hard cut to her jumping out of her chair and attacks Merrin, and it's one of those moments where my soul left my body, and it's just very effective with that. I was just like, oh my god. And again, but with that, then you get like the flair here with Luca Guadagnino. It's a lot like frantic and unpredictable of what's going on in that scene. Sometimes I watched it a few times. Madly, I don't know why, but and was just trying to work out how he was going about it, and like, yeah, he just has this very frantic quality, and you're not really sure what you're seeing at times. So yeah, it's really great in that moment. Did your soul leave your body?
Yeah, because you go in the whole scene set up. Yeah, you're like, what? Well, you're meeting almost like a deranged mum. Like this is not going to go down well. But then you sort of get settled into this. Maybe everything's fine, and this is a turning point in the film where things get nicer. But then as soon as she like leaps out, it's to be fair, like when you see like the hands and stuff, it's all bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I can't remember how scared I was at the moment. Either that or when they're sleeping with them two other male like sort of eaters as well.
Oh yeah,
and they sort of make friends of them, and they start chasing after the car. That was also pretty horrifying in that sense. Not as much of a jump scare, but also like anxiety central.
Yeah, because they're trying to sneak off in the car, and like you have Michael Stuhlbarg get up, and he runs directly towards the camera.
It's horrible,
and you're like, please cut away, please cut away. Oh my god, he's right up close, and then it cuts. Yeah, that was great too. I think the last scene is definitely where Luca Guadagnino comes into his own, and where his real sensibility and style comes through, definitely. And that last scene is great and bloody, where like Sully is in full creepy mode. Like the way he basically just lets his head like rest on Merrin's chest is just really weird and baby-like. Then it gets very violent, where like Merrin is repeatedly stabbing Sully in the chest and blood is going everywhere. But then I loved the little moment where we get these like outside shots of the outside of the building, of this very normal building. Like there's nothing happening.
Yeah, you have no idea what's going on in there.
Yeah. Then there's like an interesting choice of how to kill someone, I guess, that I guess a cannibal would choose, where Merrin just rips Sully's intestines out. Only a cannibal, I guess. Then when Lee is like dying, I love the like still shots of like this very static shot of like a knife and her coat, as if it's going through Merrin's head that, what she needs to do to help Lee, even though it's, in vain. Then I loved how like the sound cuts out and we just hear like the music as Merrin eats Timothy Chalamet. A little weird, I guess, but it feels very intimate as well. Beautiful. At the same time. Yeah. Then we get like a series of like still shots of the apartment all bloody and then all clean. Yeah, and just that, a beautiful last shot of them both on the hill. So, the last like 20 minutes or so I really loved.
Yeah, I did. That ending was really good. It's almost strange because when she's getting attacked in the building and Lee turns up, it's almost like it's like the first time you want to see him actually be horrible. Because throughout the film, when he's like doing anything like disgusting, you're like,
yeah, no thanks.
But then when he comes in that moment, like it's almost like perfect timing, and you're like, you're the right person to be here to save someone because you're going to do something horrible.
Yeah. Were there any like specific moments you liked in that last scene for you?
I mean, like I said earlier, it's like romantically, beautifully disgusting. Like you said, like that bit where like because he's like pleading with her, isn't he? To like, you've got to do this almost, and it's almost that you can't escape that. Like as odd as you are, you found someone as odd as you. Like there's always if you're going to eat people, it's fine because you'll find someone out there that will also eat people, but even better, let you eat them. And it's almost like that continuing theme, like the romance with like vulgarism, like disgusting sort of thing. But I did like that certain shot that you did mention where it's like how just messed up the place was, and then the outside shots, but then also how clean it was. It was like, it reminded me of like Zone of Interest almost, how it's just just you like fast forward, it's just another day.
Yeah,
you don't need to focus like what happened in there yesterday. Well, life moves on. It's clean now.
Yeah, like the outside world is just completely oblivious to what's going on, and you definitely get that sense throughout the film that they're in kind of this underworld kind of thing, and they introduce this thing of, they can smell they can smell fellow eaters miles away, and they kind of use that story device to bring these characters together, I guess. And yeah, and it's just a really interesting idea there. Favorite scene for you, Aaron?
The best scene is probably that final scene, like you said. But I do really like that scene we first started talking about, where he's eating the corpse. They're waiting for it to die,
Yeah.
And it's like the unveiling of, because it's almost like you know what's going on is horrific, but you haven't really been shown like how horrific it can get.
Yeah.
And then when the unveiling of him in that horrible attire with the blood, it's almost like an eye opener into like, right, we're getting pretty deep into this. So I'd probably go for that scene, to be fair.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like be a bit different.
And it's really interesting, that scene as well, because like you're being led into a false sense of security about what like cannibal life is like. Like, are all cannibals like Sully? And obviously throughout the film they're like, they're clearly not. This is very much an oddball that Marin has discovered, but she doesn't know that. She's been kind of suppressing her urges to eat people in the beginning, and when she meets this guy, it's just like, oh, okay, is this how we do it then? We have to make ropes of hair. But no, it's not that at all. So I do like that, the fact that you're not really sure what the rules are here in terms of cannibalism, because I suspect you haven't met one. I haven't met one.
Yeah, but apparently in this film, everywhere you go, there is one. So.
Yeah. That, as I said, like with the device of the fact that they can smell each other a tad.
I do like that.
Yeah, but again, like you don't feel like they're particularly very careful. No. You feel like they more people should be getting discovered, and there should be a lot less of them. But we see quite a few in this film. I don't know. America's a very big place, so it may work. Directing score, Aaron, what are you going for?
I'd probably go 7. Do you know what? We'll go down to 7. Straight 7. I was going to go 7. 7.5, but I gave Bigger Splash 8.
Yeah,
which I think is quite a lot better in terms of direction.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go. Yeah, I'll stick to a whole one less. So I'll go down to 7.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think I'll probably still stick with the 8. Yeah, I'll go like an 8.3. As I said, like I don't think this is like, don't get me wrong, like that, certainly the last like 20-25 minutes, arguably the best scene of both these films, I would say. But as a whole, I think A Bigger Splash is better directed.
Do you know what? For that last scene, lift me up to 7.5.
Okay.
Correction, yeah. Gotta put that last scene is special, yeah. We're going up to 7.5. But I just felt for a lot of the film, it didn't feel like there was a certain tone, like, not like if someone said to you like, oh, like who do you think directed this film? I probably wouldn't have been able to answer it just by watching it. So just because I don't think there was much of a stamp marked on it. Yeah,
I definitely get what you mean. I think my issue is just that there's just too much restraint here, and I think a lot of the drama stuff does work. Some of it doesn't. Sometimes, but I feel like some of the horror stuff could have been more creative for me. And I mentioned like Julia Ducournau's Raw as well, and that very much is a coming of age cannibal film. French-Belgian film, and it's super creative in what it does and beautifully directed and creative, and just some scenes like you've just never seen these things before in cinema for me, and in that film. And and it really goes hard on the horror stuff as well, and it's just beautifully done, that movie. And I just feel like it could have gone a lot further and still kept this very kind of American West tone. I think he could have achieved that still with leaning into the horror more. So yeah, still pretty damn good, but not as good as A Bigger Splash or indeed Raw. Screenplay then, like the dilemma that Merrin has like trying to discover herself is kind of fascinating. Like when she meets like Sully, a fellow cannibal, she doesn't know any different. She assumes this is what cannibal life is like we talked about, and there's no real reason why she leaves him apart from the obvious, which he's just plain weird. Anyway, regardless of him being a cannibal, then she meets like Lee, Timothy Chalamet's character, but who has like no issues in killing people, is quite happy to kill people and eat them to satisfy his thirst for eating. And obviously that doesn't sit well with Merrin. Then she's trying to find out why she has this addiction to eating people throughout. And then when she meets David Gordon Green's character, who chooses to be like a cannibal with like Michael Stuhlbarg's help, she can't handle that either. She's not happy about it. When she finds her mother for help and answers, she's gone crazy by the hunger of being a cannibal. So Merrin finds it really hard to accept who she is, and she doesn't know who to fall back on, frankly, until we kind of have this time gap and she finds Lee again. So I feel like Lee, I guess, is like the lesser of three evils, if you will, to feel more comfortable as life as a cannibal. She does come off a tad like whiny, and I'm not sure like the whole love story works entirely at the end. I wasn't really choking up or that emotional when he died at the end, but I did appreciate like the exploration.
I like the idea of it.
Yeah, of what being a cannibal could be like and how, that journey. But I just feel like she's going from character to character saying, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. You're a cannibal, love.
Yeah, it's like a kid like trying food out for the first time. It's like, you got to like something. Come on.
Yeah.
This is the life we're living.
It's not like a vampire film, I don't think, because you can take cannibalism in... It's just weird me saying this, but you can take cannibalism in different ways, I feel like, and not necessarily the same way as like in vampire films, because the first point of call, I guess you would go to in terms of theme with vampire films is drug addiction, and they kind of go down a similar road here with this film, but you don't see vampires in vampire films going like, well, I don't want to be that type of vampire. I don't want to eat that type of person. They just have the thirst for blood. Whereas with this, I just find it frustrating that the film takes a long time for her to find her place in the world as a cannibal. Did you feel like that? Or am I looking into it too much?
No, I think it's reasonable, because it's a difficult one, because it's almost like the film is mainly centered around this sort of moral dilemma of like, how can we be better cannibals?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is like you said, you're whining so much because you're a cannibal. You're bad already. You can't be a good cannibal.
Yeah.
Almost. But I guess it's like that psychological thing, like, how can we be the best of what we are, even if we are bad? And it's like you referred to that quote earlier, like, the world of love wants no monsters in it, so let me help you out.
Yeah, from her mum, yeah.
Yeah, from her mum, and it's almost like contradictory of the whole film, because the world of love does clearly want monsters in it, because this whole film, there's this relationship here between these two that are monsters. And it's just strange that she's trying to not be a monster. And I get what you mean, because she's almost whining about how to be a better monster.
Yeah, I just feel like she's just trying to go on this journey with Lee, and she's just kind of trying to fix herself. And I feel like she's not really listening to Lee, and certainly Lee is the one she can relate to the most, even though she definitely questions Lee's methods. She doesn't want to be going around killing people, but she doesn't have a lot of choice in that. And it's just, for me, I just question just how long it takes for her to realize that. And there's definitely an element as well that she has been able to suppress this. Like, there is an element of that, before she meets Lee. And that's another thing that kind of bugged me, is just like the the time scale of this film is very like ambiguous. You just have these very like, you know, July, August, and like, do we need that? I'm not sure, but I do wonder whether that kind of just complicates things. But also, I feel like, which is a major problem in the film, is I feel like Timothée Chalamet turns up too late. Like, we have 30 minutes of the film, and then he comes into the fray. So I feel like if he came in a little bit, either he comes in earlier or just make the film a little longer. And I feel like if one of those two things happened, I think the love story would have worked a little bit better for me. Did you feel that or not?
I get what because you mentioned earlier about how by the end of the film, like, you weren't like sobbing about what happened at the ending.
No. I'm a crier. I cry at films, and I did not cry at all, really.
That's what I mean. Like, I was the same. Like, I looked at the end and I thought, yeah, a great scene, but also I wasn't like, oh my God, like, that's heartbreaking what's happened. And it's probably relates to what you're saying now about maybe coming in too late, to the point that I don't think by the time he probably came in, if he was in a bit earlier, maybe there was be more time to get to that end point where it's a great scene, but it might have had more of an emotional impact.
Yeah, definitely. Favorite lines then?
It's probably that one that I've mentioned. Yeah. I think that's actually, like you mentioned, that's it. That's such a great line, especially in relation to the film. Like, the world of love wants no monsters in it, so let me help you out by obviously. But the funny thing is, the world, like, she has the main film is basically saying, like, no matter how different you are, there'll always be someone in your situation for you. And so the world of love has no room for monsters. Well, it does, because these two monsters clearly have something, even though it didn't have the emotional impact at the end that paid off for you, but it still existed.
Yeah, and I feel like the film is definitely going for this idea that they are trying to be just normal human beings towards the end as well. They make a conscious decision to try and suppress it. And, well, they kind of do suppress it, and I feel like they don't really like explore that idea enough as well, that they both can like suppress this urge to eat people. But obviously, you know, when they do go down that road of just trying to be normal human beings, trying to have a normal life, you know, Sully, a very crazed cannibal, comes back to haunt them so fatefully. So it just brings this idea of just like, as we've discussed, like, you can't, if you are a cannibal, you can't really get away from it. You have to kind of choose one of these types of cannibals that this film has presented to us and go for one, and it becomes obviously quite tragic, I guess. But again, like, I feel like there's just not enough storytelling between the both of them to really get me emotional.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. So they've definitely, something's gone wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, I say this a lot on this podcast. Like, I don't mind this film. I'm not one of these film critics, people that say like, "Oh, I wish this film was a lot shorter. It could have been shorter." No, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm like, no, this film, Bones and All, probably should have been a little longer for me. And I'm only talking like 10 minutes, maybe not even that. Just a few more extra scenes between those two. But I've certainly got a few more lines that I quite liked from Sully towards the beginning, when he does get a little bit more aggressive, and he says, "Listen, let me bone down on this. Whatever you and I got, it's got to be fed." And then later, between Timothée Chalamet and Marin, I think she says, "What was your first time like?" And he says, "It was a babysitter." Mine too. And I loved Michael Stuhlbarg in this when he's talking about David Gordon Green, and he says, "Abso-fucking-lutely, normal he is," which was quite funny. And then he goes on and says, "There's before Bones and All, and then there's after." It's quite interesting as well that we never really see anyone actually eat any bones.
Yeah, I do remember reading a lot about that. Yeah, it's almost like the ultimate goal. You never get to. It's like when I mentioned them two people earlier that like chase the truck as they're trying to escape, because they're like the two people that are like, yeah, I've gone all the way.
Yeah,
and it's like
Like, how? That would give you some stomach aches, surely. I mean, must be an axe involved? I don't know. You got to like break them bones up to get graphic.
I don't care how good of a cannibal you are. Yeah, that can't taste good. Yeah.
There's some crunch in there. Well, life's never dully with Sully is a good one. Oh, and like towards the end with Timothy Chalamet when he says he ate his dad.
Yeah.
He says, I ate him the fuck up and it felt fucking great. I felt high as a motherfucker. I felt high as a motherfucker. That was great. Yeah, and then I think my favorite line is definitely from Timothy Chalamet where he says, I could feel every blood vessel like spider webbing through me. It felt like some kind of a weird new superhero. Screenplay score for you, Aaron? What are you going for?
I'm going to push up to an 8 on that one.
Okay.
I know you mentioned some issues, but because, like I said, I sort of quite liked the film, but it was more just because I quite enjoyed like the journey of the film, even though like there was a few character like sort of issues. I still quite enjoyed the journey. I love that quote from the mum. So,
yeah.
And everything. Yeah, go to an 8 on the screenplay.
Nice. I think for me, I probably will go down to a 7 in the 7s because
we're just switching up here.
Again, like this is supposed to be like quite a dramatic love story, and I just didn't really feel much, to be honest. And you know, that's could be, you know, a casting thing. I don't know, but I just like a lot of the characters were really interesting. Apart from Merrin, I just found she was great in the beginning, but the more she annoyed me at times. I was just like, what are you doing?
You've got it in for her.
Yeah, I do. Not my favorite cannibal in cinema, I don't think. As I said, like I just find it frustrating that it just takes a while for their relationship to kindle, and it just takes too long for me. I think what the problem is that they're trying to explore too many ideas around cannibalism, and obviously trying to create a metaphor around that in terms of, you know, drug addiction and things like that. And I just feel it's just not focused enough for me. And I think it's the same with screenplay and directing, is that, you know, there's just too much restraint here with the horror stuff. So yeah, I'll go like a 7.7 for me. Right. 7.5. So acting then. I loved Mark Rylance in this, especially that first scene where he meets Merrin for the first time, and he's a real off-ball. Like, he seems like a lost child that's not really there, but has like a scary edge to him where he smells her and says that he can smell anything if you know how. Like, you feel like Merrin probably shouldn't trust him, but she doesn't know any better, as we kind of spoken about. But when they spend some time together feeding, it seems like he could be like a mentor figure for Merrin. But when she leaves on the bus and you just see him on like the pavement staring at her, he looks kind of devastated and terrifying at the same time. And you're like, yeah, we are seeing him again. For sure.
Oh yeah, I'd probably echo the same thoughts, because it's probably easy to say like Timothy Chalamet, the man of the moment, is like blah blah blah. But I do think Mark Rylance, his character's like, it evokes so many horrible emotions. It's the way he like takes you in, almost like grooms you almost into this nice sort of all these nice emotions, and then if you jump to the final scene, and it's almost like he's like fearing. He's got everything like that's like fearful on screen. Like, and every time he appears, it's almost like even as a watcher, you get anxiety because is like, oh, he's talking nice to me, but like, what's really going to happen here? Like, he's got you on edge as a watcher.
Oh yeah, and like when in that scene where he's found her again, and he's got this van, and she's like, yeah, I don't want to go with you, and he kind of just like walks back and bangs on the van, and kind of just tries to push it. It seems pushes the side of it, and you're like, what is going on? I don't understand what the hell he's doing here. And it definitely feels very improvised from Mark Rylance. It definitely doesn't feel like this was in the script what he was doing. And again, like, he's very much like a kid in an adult's body. That's definitely how I was feeling it. Michael Stuhlbarg in this is quite scary, like when he turns up to spend the evening with Lee and Merrin at their campfire. You know, he looks so like disgusting. His arm looks like it's rotting off. A very stereotypical like hillbilly figure, but it's his crazed eyes when he's talking about eating bones and all that really freaked me out. And it's just the little like pauses in his acting that work so well for me. Like when Lee and Merrin sneaked off in the truck, like Stuhlbarg is brilliantly creepy when he's just running towards the camera, as we've spoken about. And then there's David Gordon Green, who just looks like he's just turned up on the set and nobody asked him to be there. And he's got like fairly normal, clean clothes on, and he just looks and feels so out of place. You know, he just looks like one of those lonely people that just turns up and nobody knows where he came from. You know, he's the director from the new Halloween films. Just really weird casting. I guess he has some kind of there's kind of these weird dream sequences, I think, and he kind of pops up in Lee's head, I think. But apart from that, like, why is he here? It just seems weird.
Yeah, won't be winning that new casting award that they're doing at the Oscars next year.
No. Did Michael Stuhlbarg freak you out?
Yeah, I mean, that whole scene was probably, like, as much as you mentioned the jump scares from the mum scene, that one was, cause that if someone mentions Bones and all to me, that's the scene I remember the most. Because it's just, you've seen so many films that you know when they're there on that campfire sort of thing, that like, you know, these aren't your friends. This isn't a world where you have like these sort of friends, but you're almost like waiting for the moment. And then as soon as they leave, it's almost like them zombie films where like, why is he running faster than anyone you've ever seen in your whole life? And why is the car not starting fast enough as well? That's like one of them like but yeah, horrifying.
Yeah. It's such a chilled scene as well. And yet you're like really on the edge of your seat. You're like, oh my God, this guy is fucking creepy as hell.
But that scene is like completely different, but also similar to like Bigger Splash, because it's almost like there's an ominous feeling, but you're not, you know it's coming, but you're just not sure what the angle it's coming from.
Yeah.
And then it just unleashes, and you're like, well, I knew it was coming, but like you were just chill earlier, so. But yeah, no.
Yeah, Michael Stuhlbarg, fantastic, for sure. What did you make of Timothée Chalamet in this?
Well, yeah, like the thing with his sort of career altogether is he's pretty great.
Oh yeah,
in like everything he does. So you sort of like, he's got that like sort of DiCaprio almost effect, where you put him up here, so when he performs well, you don't really regard it. You don't really think about it. Like if you think about him in certain films, you think about like all these other things, but you probably won't think about Bones and all as much. But yeah, like he makes a good cannibal.
He just definitely does. I think he's definitely amazing, especially when he's like confessing about what happened to his dad, that he ate his dad. He's doing this kind of thing where he's really trying not to cry, and it's like the tears are definitely bubbling over, but he can't help but cry in the end. That was great. And like, again, Luca Guadagnino loves a dance scene with vinyl music. Like he's definitely got some moves there. Not as good as Ralph Fiennes, let's be honest. Not as good, but he's definitely got some moves.
Yeah, as like the main man of the show, I don't think it was a better performance than what Ralph Fiennes does in Bigger Splash.
No.
But he still delivers to high standards all the time.
Absolutely. He's definitely got like an edge to him and an unpredictability as well.
That scene at the end where he obviously arrives late into Sully attacking, and he has that sort of look on his face, because he as soft as he might look in some areas, he got that real sinister look. It's great. Like he's got ridiculous amount of strings to his bow.
Yeah, and if you look at him in like Call Me by Your Name, like there's none of that in there at all. Like there's no sinister edge there at all. Whereas he somehow brings that across here in just the way he carries himself for this character. I know that, well, they weren't massively far apart, but in filming those two films, but yeah, brilliant in this. Favorite performance for you, Aaron?
Mark Rylance Sully, I think, just because of how he made me feel. He had that sort of like Jesse Plemons in Civil War effect, even though he wasn't there all the time, just for what he did in his moment was probably the most I felt anxious. Every time he came, I just thought, I don't want you anywhere near what I'm going.
Yeah. He definitely gives off this vibe of feeling very uncomfortable when you watch him. You're like, oh my God, please cut to the next scene, please, without him in it.
Yeah, can we get to the next sketch?
Yeah, but I'm going to go Mark Rylance as well, just for that fact, because just for pure like unpredictability with this character, like you never know what this dude is going to do next, frankly.
Yeah, 1 minute he's being nice, next minute he's basically suffocating you on a bed.
Acting score then, Aaron? What are you going for?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go up to an 8.
Straight 8? Straight
8. I think his performance could have been like 8.5, but obviously... No, we're going to 8. I think it was all like really good. Like it was definitely all above like 7.5. But I don't think, like we mentioned with Ray Fiennes being up at 9, I just don't think there was anything that like broke a certain barrier.
No. I mean, for me, like I loved pretty much all of the performances apart from the lead. To be honest, like I think Taylor Russell is fine, but I just don't think like the chemistry is there always with Timothée Chalamet. Like Timothée Chalamet is exceptional in certain scenes, whereas I feel like for me Taylor Russell is struggling to get there.
Do you think he had it in Dune Part 2?
I think so, yeah. I think he's a tremendous actor, yeah. And yeah, I you know, again, like Zendaya is a phenomenal actor as well, and I think in Dune Part 2, like there is something there. It's not like the best ever in Dune Part 2 in terms of their chemistry, but it's definitely better than this partnership, unfortunately. And you know, everyone else is really on their A game, and I think it just could simply be just a miscasting for me. I know it's a very personal thing, but I just feel like there's too much of a whiny quality that comes off with this character, unfortunately. You know, she's not particularly very soulful. You know, some people will probably completely have the opposite view and say she's incredible, but
that she's like the star.
Yeah, so it just doesn't work as well as it could have done. And as I said, I felt nothing when Timothée Chalamet dies, not because Timothée Chalamet was bad, it was just because I just didn't feel their chemistry as much as, you know, that could have been felt. So yeah, I'll have to bring it down a little bit. But so I'll go like a 7.8 for me.
Sully really brings it up a notch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. Let's add up the scores then for Bones and All. Yeah, Bones and All gets 47.3. So A Bigger Splash wins this one, and I lose again, people. My winning streak of 1 is ended once again. I'm going to change the rules, people. I probably will do that. Who knows?
You probably would have, if you chose Call Me By Your Name, you probably would have got the...
Oh, yeah. We've already done that. And that film lost, I think. I can't remember. It was a long time ago now. Next episode, as The Fall Guy is out, we'll be talking Ryan Gosling films 2, as we've already done a Ryan Gosling episode, but the guy is amazing and he's done some really interesting work. So we're doing another one. And certainly The Fall Guy looks pretty awesome. And we'll hopefully have a guest for that one as well. A new guest again, the Film Folk UK. So that should be very exciting. Aaron, you have been amazing for your podcast debut.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity again to tell us about your Instagram page.
Yeah, mine's just a simple account, the Fake Out, just doing TV, movie reviews, and then in between that, doing like rankings. So done a few like Scorsese rankings that people sort of seem to like, where it's just, ranking top 9 films of certain directors. Got through them now, so probably moving on to ranking some actors, like probably going to do a Cillian Murphy top 9 roles, certain thing.
Nice.
And then, starting just keep reviewing movies. So we got Challengers and Interstellar's back into cinema this week. So
nice.
going to do a certain Interstellar review.
Cool.
But yeah, just the Fake Out on Instagram for movie reviews, really.
Nice. Right, it's time to say goodbye, people. I know it's very sad. It's very sad. It is ending this episode, not the podcast. Just it is goodbye from Aaron. You have been amazing. Bye bye.
Ciao.
And it is goodbye from me. I am gonna check the packet when the next time I buy meat, just to check it's not human. Bye bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.